The burden of proof. That is what has been defined very recently in a hearing regarding Alex Murdaugh and the upcoming evidentiary hearing, which will be taking place towards the end of January to decide whether or not Alex Murdaugh gets that new murder trial. The high burden of proof set by former South Carolina Supreme Court Justice Jean Toll. They must prove that the court clerk tampered with the jury and did so with prejudice against Murdaugh. Joining me to discuss, Bob Motta, defense attorney, host of the podcast Defense Diaries. We went into this hearing the other day knowing a lot of dirt on Becky Hill, but at the end of the day, as wide as that road is, it really is pretty narrow. The only area that they're going to be focusing on to determine whether or not Alec does get that new trial or not. Are you surprised by anything that we saw?
Not particularly.
No.
I mean, they made it almost an impossible task,
Hmm.
because the two arguments, which I think we talked about last time we spoke, was that the defense was saying, look, we don't have to show that what she did affected the jurors in terms of their final decision as far as the verdict goes. That
Hmm.
like we don't have to do that. Like all we have to show is that she talked to them, she tampered with them so that she was discussing the case with the jurors. That's all we have to show. And
Hmm.
then we get a retrial. And the judge here said, no, wrong. You do have to show that. You have to, she set a very high burden,
Hmm.
very difficult burden. I don't know how in the world they're going to be able to prove that what Becky Hill's intent was.
I
You know
mean,
what I
yeah,
mean? It's like
because
she,
you're
because she's
gonna
not going to get on the stand and say it.
no, you're gonna go to the source, and the source, Becky Hill, is gonna say, "No, that wasn't my intent." But
Exactly.
what does that mean?
And they limited the number of witnesses too. You know what I
Well, I
mean?
mean,
They shrunk
yeah.
the number of witnesses they can call,
If you're
you
going
know?
to someone and you're saying, "Don't believe or don't get caught up in his lies," or whatever she said, it was paraphrasing of the allegations. Um, if you say that aloud, wouldn't the intent to that be, don't believe his things, what he's saying? It'd be like me saying to you, "I'd like to go get a Big Mac. That sounds really good right now." You would think my intent was to go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. Now, I may or may not go, but that it's at least expressed that that sounds like he thought it was a good idea at that time. I don't know if he went and got one, but it was the intent. It was what he was feeling at that moment. So to
Right.
try and argue feelings and thoughts, and then have human recall come back and say, yes, this was said this way or that way. That's that. You're right. It's a very difficult burden of proof to try and come across to. But is that their goal though as well? Of like, look, we're going to make this nearly impossible. So no matter what's
Yeah.
argued, he ain't getting a new trial.
It is. I think that's exactly what it was. And, but it's a hardline rule though.
Yeah.
I mean that rule is gonna stick in South Carolina because it was a finding, and I mean they didn't even allow they're not going to allow them in this evidentiary hearing to dig into her possible motives for
Mhm.
yapping, which was, the book. Like they're not letting them get into any of that stuff. All that stuff's out. So yeah, they made it a very difficult task for them to get him another trial, at least through this avenue. Now, this doesn't affect his ability to be able to he's gonna have many other appellate
Mhm.
issues. This was something different, I mean, he's gonna file a direct appeal,
Yeah.
and it's going to include everything that was in the trial
Mhm.
itself if they're not successful here. So, he's not done appealing by a long shot. Like,
Yeah.
people don't need to be like whether but those are more challenging. Like, I think when they saw this and they had a couple of jurors come on and said, "Yeah, she was yapping a lot. She was talking, saying this and saying that." They got real excited. Wow,
Mhm.
man, they made that really easy for us because typically the appeals are going to be very, very difficult in terms of the court finding that there was the type of error that makes it reversible. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just a very difficult challenge in light of what you
Yeah.
need to be able to get to convince a court to do that, because ultimately there, it's a balancing act, and they're going to say, look, yeah, this error may have occurred during trial, but ultimately at the end of the day, it didn't affect the jury. They put
Mhm.
on so much evidence, that you were there, and that,
Yeah.
they died when you were there, and it was guns used from your property, and Like nothing that error, had
Has
it
nothing
not
to do.
occurred,
Yeah.
wouldn't have changed their mind either way.
Sure.
So it's a that's a tough road to hoe too. So I think that they thought that this was their best hope, but I'm just telling people they're going to file. There's
Yeah.
going to be a direct appeal
Well,
as
and
well.
there's
So
still active SLED investigations going on into Becky Hill and her son. We don't know yet if any of that is truly connected to the jury tampering, if it all kind of worked in tandem. I could very easily see the wiretapping having something to do with it, at least trying to get knowledge of who's saying what about Becky or what direction, but we don't have that. Should that once those investigations wrap up and that information comes to light, I would imagine that that could also be, if it's not very favorable to Becky Hill and connects to Alex Murdaugh, of being ammo for another appellate issue here. Would that not?
definitely, definitely.
Um,
I mean, if they uncover something like that, um, it certainly is going to be brought up by the defense.
yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't they? Especially if it's directly related to Murdoch. I mean,
Hmm.
how could they not?
Yeah. And he walked into that that
And
courtroom very confident the other day. I noticed, very joking, very jovial. It was kind of the
he had that little
happy.
stumble, though.
Yeah,
Did you
he
see
had the
his
little
little
stumble.
stumble?
Yep, yep. He had the little stumble, but beyond that, it seemed almost by the end of it, he didn't have that air of confidence on his face, though. Do you think they were
Yeah.
kind of thrown for a loop? Do you think that it didn't quite go as what was expected by the defense?
Oh, yeah. No, I think that Putin and Griffin were probably telling him, and he's a lawyer, he's practiced for a long time. He's different than a normal client that would
Yeah.
be kind of sitting there half understanding what's going on, but he understood all of it and he knew that it wasn't good.
Hmm.
I mean, it really was a huge gut punch to this whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, they made it to where it's going to be very challenging for them to prevail on it, and especially in light of the fact that, like, do you know, is it going to be the same judge who just ruled who's hearing the evidentiary hearing?
Yeah. It is Justice Jean Toll who's going to be presiding over this case.
So, so she's made her rulings,
Yeah.
and it kind of shows you where her mind's at. It's going to be tough. Like
Yeah.
you're convincing a judge who's made some very constrictive moves, in terms of what they can and can't do,
I mean, yeah.
and what their burden is.
What do you need at
It's
this
gonna be a
point?
tough one
Do
for
you
the
need that juror to go up there and flat out say, yes, this comment that was made by Becky or whatever conversations we had did influence me? Is that about the what will need to be proven, and
That's
nothing
about
less
it.
than that? Well, okay,
That's
let's say
about
that
it.
that's the case here, which it is. Um, I've been bringing this up. I would imagine there's probably some financial incentive for a juror to be the one that derails the Alec Murdaugh verdict. In terms of just like book deals, also there's going to be opportunities. And even if it is
Yeah.
completely true that yes, this is how it felt, and this is why I made my decision, or why I didn't make a decision this way. Um, we're talking humans, and humans are inspired or motivated by different things. And I have no idea who this juror is. I have no idea what would motivate them. I'm just kind of purely speculating here that it may be advantageous if you'd like to make a quick payday of saying, yes, I think that this definitely this influenced my verdict. You probably should get a new trial on the stand, and boom, you're making some money, and you just made life hell for everyone who has to go through
Yep.
Murdaugh trial number two. But again, not saying that they would do that. Just speculating on there might be some incentive there. Again, to put another crux into this whole case of people that lie.
It's not a crazy theory
No,
at all, because how could anyone ever prove
yeah,
that it wasn't true? It's like
yeah.
whatever's in that juror's mind. You
There's no
can't
legal
dig into their
repercussions for it.
brain.
They have every right to tell their
Yeah.
story.
No
They have
way.
every right to do anything they want
Yep.
with it. Um, yeah, I don't think it's that crazy.
It's definitely a possibility that exists in the world, man.
Yeah,
Like it wouldn't stun me. I wouldn't like,
yeah,
because exactly what you said. I mean, it's definitely a possibility because it is. Book deals, running the morning circuit.
yeah,
Little. It's yeah. I mean, it could be a quick payday, and like people are greedy.
yeah,
People do crazy things for money, man.
yeah. I mean, look at Alec Murdaugh.
Exactly.
Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and press that bell so you don't miss any of our updates on the cases we're following for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. And thanks